Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Courage Effect. This is Suzanne, and it is wonderful to have you joining me today. Today is going to be a solo show, and it's something that is really quite personal and really quite poignant for me at this moment in my life. So we are entering into the second half of October 2024. I wanted to do a show talking about where I am right now in the state of the world, and maybe some of you are sharing similar emotions, feelings, and larger stresses. Because what I've really realized in the past month is that I have been experiencing quite a bit of stress and anxiety in my larger life. And I believe that a good portion of that is coming from the larger turmoil in the world and the upcoming election. I definitely have a certain amount of stress around it. I have put myself on a news diet overall. And what I mean by that is that I limit myself to 30 minutes of news consumption in a day. It is very easy for me to either be scrolling through an app on my phone or watching television or, just at any point getting my news alerts. How much time am I actually spending with them? I'm being a lot more diplomatic about what I let in and when I let it in. I had to do this 4 years ago for the last election cycle, and I'm doing it again now. And I feel like the complexity in our world just keeps getting greater. This is something that I'm doing for my self-care and my mental wellness. And I do see this as a courageous act, me actually having the courage to recognize that something is happening to me right now. Something is physically and mentally impacting my life, and I am putting some actions in place to address it. So today I want to share with you some of the larger emotions that I'm experiencing, both positive and negative, and how that is manifesting in my life, in my mind, and in my body, and the steps that I am actually taking to address it and to move beyond it. So I'm hoping that today's show will give you a little bit more context and maybe a little bit of consideration, thoughtfulness, and something of a toolkit so you can help to navigate through your stress and maybe your anxiety and even anger of what's going on in the world right now as I bring you along on this journey with me. About 6 weeks ago, I woke up on a Saturday morning, great morning, drinking coffee with my husband, and I felt a twinge in my shoulder. And this is a recurring twinge that I've had over years. I mean, I've had recurring neck and shoulder issues, but it came and it has not gone away. I didn't do any specific movement. There was no specific action that happened, but essentially all of the stress that I was holding in my body, the physical manifestation of the larger stress that's happening in the world and some of the anger that I have around what's going on has really just been showing up in incredibly tight muscles and pain. So since then, I've seen a doctor. I've actually started a physical therapy routine to work on it. But it's really, I'm having the courage I have to listen to my body. I'm in a certain amount of pain right now. It has required me to pay attention to what is really going on, because it's not just about the pain that I'm experiencing, but it's where is it coming from and how can I start to unravel that? And obviously I'm doing that physically with my physical therapist and just the larger exercises that I've been integrating into my life. But it's also the practices that I've put in place for myself on an emotional level. The ability that I've given myself to understand what are the emotions that I'm feeling right now. How do I address it? What's the information? What's it telling me? And what do I do with it? So today's show, as I said, is going to be about this. And that was really the instigator for me. So this level of pain is something that I have had in various levels over the past 6 weeks. It's been quite acute. It's been a dull, numbing pain, but it's never quite gone away. So it's like this constant little reminder that is poking at me and reminding me to take care of myself, to remind me to tend to myself and what is happening inside Suzanne. Let's talk a little bit about emotions, how we have a better idea of what emotions we're feeling, how we can unpack that and unravel it, and how that shows up in our body, and how that might also show up in our relationship with other people, how we're showing up every day, and also in our relationship with ourselves, because that is the thing that is going to be fueling how we feel every day, how our body is responding to the various things that we're manifesting in our muscles and our bones. But my body is telling me something that I have been listening to and I'm continuing to listen to. A lot of this for me is starting with, what is it telling me? And what this pain is telling me is that it is larger stress. It is this anxiety. And for a number of months now, especially with all of these things happening in the larger world, this is chronic stress. And there's a great book by R. Douglas Fields called Why We Snap. And this is really talking about anger and rage and emotions overall. He has this great quote: chronic stress literally rewires the rage circuits in your brain. When we are under chronic stress, we do not necessarily have the ability to respond to emotions and situations in a way that we would when we're feeling better, when we're not under chronic stress. So it breaks down our resilience and our adaptability to getting annoyed at something, getting frustrated. And what I have really learned over the years, and one thing that has been an incredibly valuable resource for me, is learning the term emotional literacy and how I actually talk about emotions in my life. And I use this a lot with my clients, because the idea is that, when we talk about emotions overall, we tend to think that, when we say, well, how many emotions do you think there are? And the average person in the world actually says less than 10. They say, mad, happy, sad. They give you, there's a few of them, but in reality, there's hundreds of emotions, and they're all at different levels, right? We have like the higher level ones, but what is really, what I like to say, beneath the surface? If it was an iceberg, what you're feeling is on top, that emotion, that response, but what's going on beneath the waterline? And when we have the ability to dig a little bit deeper into that information, this is where we have the ability to really understand what is bothering us. So chronic stress can be something that it's coming from many different places. And we always have this balance of positive and negative emotions in our lives. That's a good thing. We want to have both. We need to have space to be able to feel both. But we also want to make sure that we have a balance that is working for us, that there is a ratio that is healthy, that is not causing shoulder pain, or causing us, I also clenched my jaw. That's another thing that I'm experiencing, is when do I have tension on my jaw? When am I getting stressed out? And other things in our lives, and you all know this, when we feel an emotion, we do have a physical or somatic response. So, like maybe it's tight shoulders, maybe it's a punch in the gut or an empty stomach. Maybe it's cringing up your face. We all have our own brand and our own recipe depending on what's going on. But our emotions do, in fact, affect our bodies. So understanding what the emotions are helpful, because sometimes, is it just anger? When we get mad at something, when we get frustrated, how do we hit the pause button for a minute, or how do we actually reflect on what is beneath that waterline? What is really annoying me right now? And with anger in particular, it can be a pretty interesting emotion to unpack, because there's a lot of other things that might be going on beneath the surface. It might be disappointment. It could be feeling dissatisfied. Maybe you're feeling powerless. But the idea of the emotions wheel, which is this larger wheel, which I can put a link for in the show notes if you haven't seen it, it gives us a better idea of, this is the emotion that I'm feeling. What might be driving it? What might be motivating it? And what I love about the emotions wheel is that you can keep going deeper, and you can also tend to see what's on the other side. So it helps you to see, these are the emotions that maybe if I'm able to bring in, or I'm able to increase or feel, this will counteract some of what I'm sitting in, the stew that I'm sitting in right now. So as we go beneath the waterline, it does give us the ability to truly understand the data that it's giving us, as I said before. we can then start to unpack it. We can have a better idea of what are the needs that aren't being met in that moment. I realized last week I I'm supposed to have a call with somebody, and he unfortunately didn't show up for this call. And I got really frustrated. And this was somebody that had reached out to me to connect, and I didn't know him. And then when you're sitting there waiting to talk to somebody, they don't show up, and then they don't respond to an email even during the course of the call. I mean, I hung up after 5 minutes because, and sending a note, they weren't there. But then sending a note a day later, oh, really sorry, let's reschedule. And I was really annoyed, and I had no idea. I had no desire to reschedule with this person. He didn't respect my time. Why bother? I was pissed. I mean, it was, for some reason I was pissed, and I didn't know why. So I then the next morning was doing my journaling. I try to journal every morning, and I was trying to get an idea of what was going on. What were the various emotions that I'd been feeling? And anger was definitely something that had been hanging out, right? Like there was some residue that had stuck from that incident the day before. And I realized, this right now, this anger is hurting me. It's not hurting him. I mean, this guy doesn't know that I'm mad. I hadn't responded to the email. I'm the one that is being hurt by this based on the physical pain that I'm experiencing. It's exacerbating what's going on in my body. It's also potentially resulting in me not showing up the same way. I'm going to be feeling angry and frustrated and maybe on edge in my interactions with my family, with my clients. This is potentially going to be degrading what I do, the quality of my work, and who I am, and what is so important to me. So having that realization of, okay, I have the most to lose here. Why am I really mad about this? Yes, it's frustrating, but let's give this guy a chance. Let's be generous. Let's open up to what this conversation might be. So I sent him a note, we rescheduled, and we had a call yesterday, and it was a great call. And I'm actually quite encouraged by what we talked about, and this being a partnership that might be good for me in that I can learn something from it, and it might also bring some new business and some new opportunities my way. So if I hadn't just, hit the pause button, unpacked that, taken some inventory on what was going on, and really realized that I would have lost out on something that actually brought or could potentially bring something great to my life. And I'd really rather be in that zone of possibility. I'd rather be feeling good, feeling more generous than just sitting in anger and writing somebody off. So this was a good immediate lesson that let me know that my emotions were clouding my judgment. They were making me feel worse. They were adding to the stress in my body. So I am being kinder to the person that I had this exchange with, myself, all the people that interact with me, because I am having, there's something called the incidental mood bias, right? The idea that when you're in that zone, when you're angry or when you're feeling really happy, it is contagious, right? There is a little bit more of a bias that people might feel because you're showing up differently. I'd rather be biased to bring more good and more positive emotions into the world than negative. So this is an invitation for all of you. I want you to think about, what are the emotions that you're experiencing right now? How are you feeling? That is a big question, right? I mean, we ask people that, like, oh, how are you feeling? Like it's a light, quick thing. And as we all know, it's probably not a light, quick thing when we're responding to it. But this is something for you to marinate on. How do you feel? How are you feeling both now? And how might the emotions that you're feeling now impact you later, moving forward? And how might they influence people around you? Like I said, that incidental mood bias. But what are the emotions that are going on? If you're experiencing chronic stress like I have been, if you're experiencing anger and maybe some anxiety, because that's also wrapped up into this stew too, how is that impacting your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people, and how you're showing up every day? Are you showing up as the person that you want to show up as? I am making the decision consciously for myself to show up as more generous, more compassionate, less judgmental. And that's who I want to be. These are core values for me. I'd much rather be there instead of being this toxic, negative stew that is potentially infecting others around me. I am going to take a break for an ad right now. I want to talk about, as we continue on emotional literacy, a little bit more about emotions and our ability to recognize those emotions and not necessarily be as controlled by them. Because even though our emotions have a massive amount of impact on the decisions that we make in life, they don't have to control us. And I think that my story just gave you a little bit of an example of how that might be. But I'd love to put a couple more ideas out there that I've been using to help me work through this stress and this anger and this anxiety. Just say no to fast fashion. Cheap clothing we only wear a few times and then toss aside has significant environmental impact. We need to shift to a more sustainable solution, and here's one step to take you in the right direction. Clothing rental from Armoire. Using Armoire these past few years has really changed how I think about clothes, my shopping habits, and empowered me to make more sustainable choices. I'm buying less, rarely visit the dry cleaner, and still look and feel great in what I'm wearing. Armoire makes clothing rental easy. I love building a rotating wardrobe with high-quality designer brands that are unique and sustainably sourced. They serve up amazing choices for me. All I have to do is make my selections, and they ship them straight to my door. If you're ready to curate your dream closet, you must try Armoire. And right now, my listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That is up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style. That's ARMOIRE.style/The Courage Effect to get up to 50% off your first month. Imagine a beautiful, stress-free, and environmentally conscious wardrobe. Try Armoire today. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Courage Effect. This is Suzanne. We are talking about emotions. We're talking about anger. We're talking about anxiety and chronic stress, some of the things that I've been dealing with over the past couple of months. And with everything that's happening in the broader universe right now, and especially with the upcoming election, I mean, let's face it, this really is a challenging time for us all, as far as for, our emotions. We see so much of what's going on in the world. We want to help. We want to make a difference. I do believe that it's vital for us to think about that larger impact that we can have in the world. So much of that impact starts with us. How do we look inside of ourselves to really have an idea of what's going on? What are the choices that we want to make based on the emotions that we're feeling? And how can we actually have the impact that we want to have, the success from the actions that we then take, the behaviors as a result of the emotions that we're feeling? I talked about some of the anger that I was recently experiencing and how I've been working through it. I want to talk more about not just anger, but emotions overall. And really as far as like chronic stress and with anxiety being thread in here. And this is really a conversation about emotions. And I know a lot of people, emotions are an uncomfortable thing for many of us, for all of us in different ways. But sometimes people are a little bit allergic to them, right? They tend to be more logical people. Emotions are something that they know are there, but they really want to, they would love to limit them or relegate them to certain facets or aspects of their lives. We want to be, reasonable. And that's a word that is actually very squishy as far as reasonable by who's defining it. But we'd like to be logical, and we'd like to make decisions that we believe are based on reason and fact. Emotions do come into play, but there's something about, wanting to make sound decisions that we feel good about, that give us stability, that give us the, some equanimity, as it would be, to sit in logic and reason and just feel solid. I would also say that, emotions are a big part of our lives. We know that they play a large role in determining our actions. There's some great thoughts on this in Permission to Feel, which is a book by Mark Brackett. fantastic book, talks a lot about emotional literacy. But it's the idea that we can't just squelch our emotions. We can't just push them down and pretend that they don't exist. Because the challenge with that is that they don't go away. Just like all of these things that happen in our lives, we can essentially pretend that they're not influencing us, or maybe even pretend that they don't exist. But that is not helpful. That is not something that is allowing us to work through the role that they are playing in our lives, with the decisions that we're making, with how we're showing up, with the behaviors that we're exhibiting towards ourselves and others every day. And the choices that we're making, who are the people that we're interacting with? What's the food that we're putting in our mouths? Are we making decisions for ourselves that are less healthy or maybe healthy? We know that if we're experiencing a lot of negative emotions, we can tend to fall into less healthy behaviors. And that has a much larger impact as far as our longevity and also maybe our future emotional state. Because instead of actually addressing it and allowing us to potentially work through negative emotions and make them positive, we are potentially just digging ourselves in deeper. As we get a greater emotional awareness, these are the things that can serve as information. When we're actually going below that waterline, I'm feeling angry. Am I disappointed? Like, is this frustration? Is this anger about some other need that isn't being met? When we start to dive deeper, we have a better understanding of what is motivating us, what we need, and what we need to tend to. And as a result, we can then make a decision for how we're going to respond to any given situation. It's actually really interesting too with anger, because research has told us that when people are angry, we tend to believe that individuals are at fault for what is going on. So it's very easy for us to blame other people when we're mad. And obviously, that's a dangerous thing, because we're blaming other people for things that aren't necessarily their fault. And we are maybe scapegoating. We are not taking responsibility for where we are experiencing anger and what we might be able to do about the situation, where we might be able to have control. And I know that's where it gets really difficult, is when we don't feel we have any control. And that honestly has been a big thing for me over the past couple of years. With a lot of hard things happening in the world, just with world affairs, with friends that have been battling sickness, with friends that have been dying, I don't feel like I've had a lot of control over things. And the sad part about that is that my need to control and to feel better then makes me want to fix it. And these are things that I don't necessarily have the ability to fix. So that tendency to fix really is a fallacy, right? It's the illusion that I have the ability to control and to fix something. But if I look beneath that waterline, and if I'm looking at the emotions, okay, I'm feeling like I can't control this. I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm looking at my longevity, and I'm maybe not taking care of myself as much as I want to. That's just an example. And yes, I have been experiencing that emotion. But what are the things that we might be able to do to have that conversation with ourselves, to start to unravel it a little bit more, to not blame other people, to make it somebody else's fault when things go wrong? I'm allowed to feel anger, and we are all allowed to feel anger. And I think that's the first thing that we really need to do, is really understand what is triggering us, what is making us angry in those moments. How do we express it? I mean, my body is one way that I'm expressing it, but how am I expressing it to other people? How is it surfacing? That's one of the ways that I like to say it, because it's bubbling over. And these are the things that I need to pay attention to, right? This is the effect of the anger. But I need to give myself permission to be angry, because anger is not always a bad thing. It can fuel creativity. It can be something that takes us into a new space where we actually are able to realize possibility. Like if we get pissed off because something isn't going the way that we want to, this is where we might be able to create positive change, the change that we would like to see. Giving ourselves permission to be angry, but is it potentially like dirty fuel, like bad anger, where it isn't productive? It is potentially getting more detrimental for ourselves. Is it manifesting in a way that I don't want it to, as opposed to me channeling it into something where I might be able to do something creative, or I might be able to do something positive with it? Once we start to unpack it, we'll understand what needs aren't being met. We need to start to put together a plan, because understanding where it came from and what our needs are doesn't necessarily mean that you know what to do with what's next. And how do you actually stop it from happening, or how do you diminish it from getting more activated in the future? And that's the thing, is that these are things that we are going to be triggered in the future, and it's going to happen. It's an inevitable thing. So how do we give ourselves a toolkit and really build up that muscle to be able to handle it with more adaptability, with more grace, and with more patience and compassion for ourselves and others as we're going through it? So once we start to understand what activated our anger, then we go beneath the surface. What's below that waterline? What are these feelings? Then what is this telling me? That allows me to get a better idea of what's really going on. What is really annoying me? What is making me sad? There has to be something else going on here. And then I move into, after I've identified what that emotion is, I move into, what do I need to be okay right now? That's also another really powerful question, because I'm moving from, this is the need that I have that isn't being met, to, what are the things that I need to do that are potentially going to give me what I need to be okay? I might need to talk to somebody else to help me through what I need to feel okay. Sometimes it can be very helpful to have a loved one or a therapist, a friend, somebody in your life that you're able to have that conversation with, so that you can get a better idea of what you might need. There might not be one answer for it. It might be something that you need to spend a little bit of time on, but this is something that is the core to what is potentially going to be coming next. And what helps me also to get a better idea of what I need is, what is the outcome that I want? Like, is it just to not be angry, or is it a matter of, I want to be more forgiving overall? I want to be more curious. Then when I think about it in that way, I'm allowing myself to enter into the more positive realm. I can sort of tap into the more sage part of myself. The nice, positive, lovely, knowledgeable, wise side, as opposed to the judgmental, pissed off, angry, divisive side. And that alone opens up creativity. It unlocks new thinking, and it gives me more ability to have an idea of, this is what I need, and these are the things that I need to do to make it happen. So once we know what's the outcome is, what's the short term and maybe the longer term outcome, I love then going into the idea of, what are the options that I have to make this happen? For me, I want to be more generous. I don't want to sit there and judge people and write them off. What are my options? What are the things that I can do? Maybe I need to put a little bit of a boundary around it. Having a better idea of what are the options gives us the knowledge and the wherewithal to make a choice for ourselves, and to have a better understanding of, there's more than one way to approach it. Choice can be a really wonderful thing, and the idea of us creating options for ourselves, creating choices, we just feel better informed and more autonomous, right? Like, we have more agency, we're more ready to step in. And then finally, once you have those options, what's the upside and what's the downside? Just because it might be something that helps you to get there doesn't mean that it's not going to have a downside to it. There might be costs. There might be things that you need to do that you don't necessarily want. What are the challenges? What are the things that you're putting in front of you that might be difficult? But if you then start to weigh out that cost and know that it is worthwhile, then that's the decision that you can make. And you know, this is the cost, but it's worth what's on the other side. It's worth the investment. Your return on investment is going to be great enough for you to do it. As you then start to move forward with it, think about, communication can be a part of this. We can be angered, or we can be frustrated, or we can be wronged by somebody. And our resolution is communicating with them. If communicating is going to be a part of you working through it, which, if you realize that that's what you need to do, that's a courageous act. And it's one that I definitely recommend putting a little bit of preparation into. because it's not just about getting your emotions out there, but how do you have a conversation that moves you forward, that helps you to reconcile what you're wrangling, to help you resolve that anger. So think about what success looks like on the other side of that conversation. What might be the things you need to say to help you to achieve that, and how and when you're going to say it. And the other thing that I would also say about this is that that person might not apologize. Maybe you're looking for an apology. You might not get it. That can be really hard. Maybe having that conversation and working through it with somebody is going to be enough for you. Maybe that's success. If you don't have the ability to change the outcome of how that person feels or the larger forces that are impacting it, again, go back to your needs. What are the needs that weren't being met as you worked through this? And how can they be met in other ways? We need to work on resolving these situations, these emotions, these patterns, and not necessarily fixing them. I feel like we add more stress onto ourselves when we say, I'm going to fix it, as opposed to resolving it. Because with resolving it, like, we're going to work through it. We don't necessarily know what's going to be on the other side, but it is going to be part of that process. And for me, I'm going to be better for having gone through that process. It's going to give me a way to have worked through that emotion in a positive way, as opposed to it taking me over, me walking around in this constantly triggered state and having pain in my shoulder. It's going to take time, but I need to work through ways to dispel the anger and not create more anxiety for myself, because anxiety overall is this, again, like, that's another layer of white noise that we all have. We only have so much control. With anxiety, what is it telling you? It's almost like an overprotective best friend, right? It's telling you to take care of yourself. It's telling you to pay attention to something, maybe more than you want, because anxiety can be a really exhausting and difficult thing to deal with. But again, what are the needs that aren't being met that you might need to be paying more attention to? Maybe it's an alarm bell of some sort for you to work through it. And it's always helpful for me with anxiety to think about, instead of pushing it away, welcome it in, invite it in. What is it telling me? What can I do about this? And again, what do I have control over? What in this scenario, what in this situation do I have the ability to respond to in a different way? Can I influence? And sometimes that's just going to be my emotions around it. So again, then we can go back to this process of the needs that are being met. How can you really and truly reconcile what's going on with you in the shorter term and the longer term, and how you can put some solutions in place to address that? Okay, so this was a lot of information about emotions. I know I shared a lot with all of you, but what I really want to remind you as I do a quick capture of what we talked about today is that we do have a positive and negative combination of emotions in our life, and that is okay. We need to have space for all of them. Think about the ratio of positive and negative in your life, and how might you be able to change that ratio? What are the things that are really weighing you down? What are the things that are really buoying you up? What are the things that maybe need more tending? And when you have those acute emotions, such as, stress or anger or anxiety, take some time to hit the pause button, step back, and look at what's going on, to have that deeper conversation with yourself, to unpack what is really bothering me, what are the needs that aren't being met, how might I be able to meet them, who might be able to help me do that, and what is potentially on the other side of working through it. This gives us more ability to work through what is truly bothering us. It gives us a plan. It gives us some, actual steps that we can take to work through it. And it makes us more emotionally agile over time. It makes us more flexible when things are crazy around us, when we're experiencing chaos. So as we are all in a bit of a chaotic time right now, in a stressful and an uncertain time, I am hoping that this is helpful. I'm hoping that me sharing my stories have given you some context to maybe put some new practices in place in your life. Let me know. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about what are some of the things that you're stressing about. If you have solutions for people, other tips or techniques that you want to recommend for us all to be able to, step into our courage to navigate our emotions in a really stressful and uncertain time, please share it. You can reach me via thecourageeffect.com, also on social media. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to invite you to think about how you might be able to step into a less emotional reactive state through a more courageous lens. How courage might be able to help you to hit the pause button, take some time, and resolve that stress, that anger, and that anxiety that might be going on in your life right now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spreading courageous contagion. Take care, everybody. Stay courageous. The Courage Effect is brought to you by Weller Collaboration. We partner with individuals, teams, and organizations to enhance leadership, increase agility, and build effective teams. More information about us is available via the links in our show notes. Please spread the word about the Courage Effect. Rate and review your favorite episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Share with your colleagues, family, and anyone in your universe who might be inspired by a good dose of courage. If you have feedback or stories to share about the show or would like to apply to be a guest, please contact us via our website. Benny Mathers is our producer. Dave Nelson composed our theme music. Alex Sandyforth is our administrative maven, and I'm your host, Suzanne Weller.